But if you're not willing to acknowledge that it's a dangerous place for children, the internet is a dangerous place for children, not just your platform, isn't it? Isn't the internet a dangerous place for children?
I think it can be. We work very hard to take it down.
Didn't take it down.
We've reported, I think it's more than 26 million examples of this kind of content.
Didn't take it down until a congressional staffer brought it up. Every 2 minutes, a child is bought or sold for sex.
The thing is, that's everyone knows there's a correlation. Everyone knows that kids who spend a lot of time, too much time on your platforms are at risk. And it's not just the mental health issues. I mean, let me ask you another question. Is your platform safe for kids?
I believe it is, but there's an important difference between correlation and causation.
Because we're not going to be able to get anywhere. We want to work in a productive, open, honest, and collaborative way with the private sector to pass legislation that will protect Americans, that will protect American children above all, and that will allow businesses to thrive in this country. If we don't start with an open, honest, candid, realistic assessment of the issues, we can't do that. The first point is you want kids to use the platform more. In fact, you have an obligation to. But if you're not willing to acknowledge that it's a dangerous place for children, the internet is a dangerous place for children, not just your platform, isn't it? Isn't the internet a dangerous place for children?
I think it can be. Yeah, there's both great things that people can do and there are harms that we need to work to mitigate.
Yeah, it's a dangerous place for children. There are families here who have lost their children. There are families across the country whose children have engaged in self-harm, who have experienced low self-esteem, who have been sold deadly pills on the internet. The internet's a dangerous place for children, and your platforms are dangerous places for children. Do you agree?
I think that there are harms that we need to work to mitigate.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not going to, I think overall...
Why not? Why not? Why not just acknowledge it? Why do we have to do the very careful code?
I disagree with the characterization.
Which character, that the internet's a dangerous place for children?
I think you're trying to characterize our products as inherently dangerous, and I think that...
Inherent or not, your products are places where children can experience harm. They can experience harm to their mental health. They can be sold drugs. They can be preyed upon by predators. They're dangerous places. And yet, you have an obligation to promote the use of these platforms by children. And look, all I'm trying to suggest to you, Mr. Zuckerberg, and my time is running short, is that in order for you to succeed, you and your colleagues here, we have to acknowledge these basic truths. We have to be able to come before the American people, the American public, the people in my state of Georgia, and acknowledge the internet is dangerous, including your platforms. There are predators lurking. There are drugs being sold. There are harms to mental health that are taking a huge toll on kids' quality of life. And yet, you have this incentive, not just you, Mr. Zuckerberg, all of you have an incentive to boost, maximize use, utilization, and engagement. And that is where public policy has to step in to make sure that these platforms are safe for kids. So kids are not dying, so kids are not overdosing, so kids are not cutting themselves or killing themselves because they're spending all day scrolling instead of playing outside. And I appreciate all of you for your testimony. We will continue to engage as we develop this legislation. Thank you.
Senator from Tennessee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to each of you for coming, and I know some of you had to be subpoenaed to get here, but we do appreciate that you all are here. Mr. Chu, I want to come to you first. We've heard that you're looking at putting a headquarters in Nashville and likewise in Silicon Valley and Seattle, and what you're going to find probably is that the welcome mat is not going to be rolled out for you in Nashville like it would be in California. There are a lot of people in Tennessee that are very concerned about the way TikTok is basically building dossiers on our kids, the way they are building those on their virtual you. And also that information is held in China, in Beijing, as you responded to Senator Blumenthal and I last year in reference to that question. And we also know that a major music label yesterday said they were pulling all of their content off your site because of your issues on payment, on artificial intelligence, and because of the negative impact on our kids' mental health. So we will see how that progresses. Mr. Zuckerberg, I want to come to you. We have just had, Senator Blumenthal and I, of course, have had some internal documents and emails that have come our way. One of the things that really concerned me is that you referred to your young users in terms of their lifetime value of it being roughly $270 per teenager. And each of you should be looking at these kids. Their T-shirts they're wearing today say, I'm worth more than $270. We've got some standing up in those T-shirts. Now, and some of the children from our state, some of the children, the parents that we have worked with, just to think, whether it is Becca Schmidt, David Mollick, Sarah Flatt, Annalie Schote, would you say that life is only worth $270? What could possibly lead you? I mean, I listened to that. I know you're a dad. I'm a mom. I'm a grandmom. And how could you possibly even have that thought? It is astounding to me. And I think this is one of the reasons that states, 42 states are now suing you because of features that they consider to be addictive, that you are pushing forward. And in the emails that we've got from 2021 that go from August to November, there is the staff plan that is being discussed. And Antigone Davis, Nick Clegg, Sheryl Sandberg, Chris Cox, Alex Schultz, Adam Masseri are all on this chain of emails on the well-being plan. And then we get to one, Nick did email Mark for emphasis, to emphasize his support for the package, but it sounds like it lost out to various other pressures and priorities. See, this is what bothers us. Children are not your priority. Children are your product. Children you see as a way to make money. And children, protecting children in this virtual space, you made a conscious decision. Even though Nick Clegg and others were going through the process of saying, this is what we do. These documents are really illuminating. And it just shows me that growing this business, expanding your revenue, what you were going to put on those quarterly filings, that was the priority. The children were not. It's very clear. I want to talk with you about the pedophile ring because that came up earlier, and the Wall Street Journal reported on that. And one of the things that we found out was after that became evident, then you didn't take that content down. And it was content that showed that teens were for sale and were offering themselves to older men. And you didn't take it down because it didn't violate your community standards. Do you know how often a child is bought or sold for sex in this country? Every 2 minutes. Every 2 minutes, a child is bought or sold for sex. That's not my stat. That is a TBI stat. Now, finally, this content was taken down after a congressional staffer went to Meta's global head of safety. So would you please explain to me and to all these parents why explicit predatory content does not violate your platform's terms of service or your community standards?
Sure, Senator. Let me try to address all of the things that you just said. It does violate our standards. We work very hard to take it down.
Didn't take it down.
We've reported, I think it's more than 26 million examples of this kind of content.
Didn't take it down until a congressional staffer brought it up.
it may be that in this case, we made a mistake and missed something.
I
but
think
we
you
have-
make a lot of
But
mistakes, so let's
we have
move
leading
on.
teams that
I want to
identify more
talk
than.
with you about your Instagram Creators Program and about the push. We found out through these documents that you actually are pushing forward because you want to bring kids in early. You see these younger teenagers as valuable but an untapped audience, quoting from the emails, and suggesting teens are actually household influencers to bring their younger siblings into your platform, into Instagram. Now, how can you ensure that Instagram creators, your product, your program, does not facilitate illegal activities when you fail to remove content pertaining to the sale of minors? And it is happening once every 2 minutes in this country.
Senator, our tools for identifying that kind of content are industry leading. That doesn't mean we're perfect. There are definitely issues that we have, but we continue to
Mr.
invest a ton in it.
Zuckerberg, yes, there are a lot that is slipping through. It appears that you're trying to be the premier sex trafficking
Of course
site
not, Senator.
in this country.
Senator, that's ridiculous.
No,
S-
it is
Senator,
not ridiculous.
Of
You
course
want
we
to
don't
turn
want
around
this-
and
we
tell
don't want
these
this
people
content
that.
on our platforms, and
Why don't you take it down?
We do take it
We
down.
are here discussing,
We
we
do more
need
work to
you
take it
all
down
to
than-
work
than-
with
than-
us.
than-
No, you're not. You are not. And the problem is, we've been working on this, Senator Welch is over there, we've been working on this stuff for a decade. You have an army of lawyers and lobbyists that have fought us on this every step of the way. You work with NetChoice, the Cato Institute, Taxpayers Protection Alliance, and Chamber of Progress to actually fight our bipartisan legislation to keep kids safe online. So are you going to stop funding these groups? Are you going to stop lobbying against this and come to the table and work with us? Yes or no?
Senator, we have a.
Yes or no?
Of course, we'll work with you on the legislation.
Okay,
I mean,
the
it's
door
been hard
is
to-
open. We've got all these bills. You need to come to the table. Each and every one of you need to come to the table. And you need to work with us. Kids are dying.
Senator Welch?
I want to thank my colleague, Senator Blackburn, for her decade of work on this. I actually have some optimism. There is a consensus today that didn't exist, say, 10 years ago, that there is a profound threat to children, to mental health, to safety. There's not a dispute. That was in debate before. That's a starting point. Secondly, we're identifying concrete things that can be done in 4 different areas. 1 is industry standards. 2 is legislation. 3 are the courts. And then 4 is a proposal that Senator Bennett, Senator Graham, myself, and Senator Warren have to establish an agency, a governmental agency, whose responsibility would be to engage in this on a systematic, regular basis with proper resources. And I just want to go through those. I appreciate the industry standard decisions and steps that you've taken in your companies. But it's not enough, and that's what I think you're hearing from my colleagues. Like, for instance, where there are layoffs in it is in the trust and verify programs. That's alarming because it looks like there is a reduction in emphasis on protecting things. Like, you just added, Ms. Iaccarino, 100 employees in Texas in this category. And how many did you have before?
The company is just coming through a significant restructuring. So we've increased the number of trust and safety employees and agents all over the world by at least 10% so far in the last 14 months. And we will continue to do so, specifically in Austin, Texas.
All right, Mr. Zuckerberg, my understanding is there have been layoffs in that area as well. There's added jobs there at Twitter, but at Meta, have there been reductions in that?
There have been across the board, not really focused on that area. I think our investment is relatively consistent over the last couple of years.
All right,
We
well-
invested almost $5 billion in this work last year, and I think this year will be on the same order of magnitude.
All right, and another question that's come up is when, to the horror of a user of any of your platforms, somebody has an image on there that's very compromising, often of a sexual nature. Is there any reason in the world why a person who wants to take that down can't have a very simple, same-day response to have it taken down? I'll start with Twitter on that.
I'm sorry, Senator, I was taking notes. Could you repeat the question?
Well, there's a lot of examples of a young person finding out about an image
Yeah.
that is of them and really compromises them and actually can create suicidal thoughts. And they want to call up or they want to send an email and say, take it down. I mean, why is it not possible for that to be responded to immediately?
Well, we all strive to take down any type of violative content or disturbing content immediately. At X, we have increased our
But
capabilities
shouldn't
with a
that be, shouldn't that
two-step
just be a
reporting
standard?
process.
If I'm a parent or I'm a kid and I want this down, shouldn't there be methods in place where it comes down? You can see what the image is.
Yes.
An
Mr. Zuckerberg, go ahead.
ecosystem-wide standard would improve and actually enhance the experience for users at all our platforms.
All right.
There actually is an organization that I think a number of the companies up here are a part of called Take It Down. It's some technology that we and a few others
All right,
built
so
that
you
basically.
all are in favor of that, because
Oh, yeah, this
that
already
is going to give
exists.
some peace of mind to people, all right? It really, really matters. I don't have that much time, so we've talked about the legislation, and Senator Whitehouse had asked you to get back with your position on Section 230, which I'll go to in a minute, but I would welcome each of you responding as to your company's position on the bills that are under consideration in this hearing, all right? I'm just asking you to do that. Third, the court. This big question of Section 230. And today, I'm pretty inspired by the presence of the parents who have turned their extraordinary grief into action and hope that other parents may not have to suffer what for them is a devastating, for everyone, a devastating loss. Senator Whitehouse asked you all to get back very concretely about Section 230 and your position on that. But it's an astonishing benefit that your industry has that no other industry has. They just don't have to worry about being held accountable in court if they're negligent. So you've got some explaining to do, and I'm just reinforcing Senator Whitehouse's request that you get back specifically about that. And then finally, I want to ask about this notion, it's this idea of a federal agency who's resourced and whose job is to be dealing with public interest matters that are really affected by big tech. It's extraordinary what has happened in our economy with technology, and your companies represent innovation and success. But just as when the railroads were ascendant and were in charge and ripping off farmers because of practices they were able to get away with, just as when Wall Street was flying high, but there was no one regulating blue sky laws, we now have a whole new world in the economy. And Mr. Zuckerberg, I remember you testifying in the Energy and Commerce Committee, and I asked you your position on the concept of a federal regulatory agency. My recollection is that you were positive about that. Is that still the case?
I think it could be a reasonable solution. There are obviously pros and cons to doing that versus through the normal, the current structure of having different regulatory agencies focused on specific issues.
Right.
But because a lot of the things trade off against each other, like one of the topics that we talked about today is encryption, and that's obviously really important for privacy and security.
Right. Can we
makes
just
some
go down
areas.
the line? I'm at the
Sure.
end, but thank you, Mr. Iacono.
Senator, I think the industry initiative to keep those conversations going would be something X would be very, very proactive about. If you think about our support of the REPORT Act, the SHIELD Act, the Stop CSAM Act, our support of the Project Safe Childhood
Okay.
Act, I think our intentions are clear to participate and
Mr.
to
Shu?
lead here.
Yeah.
Senator, we support national privacy legislation, for example, so that sounds like a good idea. We just need to understand what it means.
All right. Mr. Spiegel?
Senator, we'll continue to work with your team, and we'd certainly be open to exploring the right regulatory body for big technology.
But the idea of a regulatory body is something that you can see has merit.
Yes, Senator.
And Mr. Sifrin?
Yeah, we're very open to working with you and our peers and anybody on helping make the internet a safer place. You know, I think you mentioned this is not a one-platform problem.
Right.
So we do look to collaborate with other companies and with nonprofits in the government.
Okay.
to
I
make it
thank
safer
you
for
all.
everybody.
Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Senator Welch. Well, we're going to conclude this hearing, and thank you all for coming today. You probably have your scorecard out there. You've met at least 20 members of this committee and have your own impressions of their questioning and approach and the like. But the one thing I want to make clear as chairman of this committee for the last 3 years is this was an extraordinary vote on an extraordinary issue. A year ago, we passed 5 bills unanimously in this committee. You heard all the senators. Every spot on the political spectrum was covered. Every single senator voted unanimously in favor of the 5 pieces of legislation we've discussed today. It ought to tell everyone who follows Capitol Hill and Washington a pretty stark message. We get it, and we live it. As parents and grandparents, we know what our daughters and sons and others are going through. They cannot cope. They cannot handle this issue on their own. They're counting on us as much as they're counting on the industry to do the responsible thing. And some will leave with impressions of our witnesses and the companies they represent that you're right as an American citizen. But you ought to also leave with the determination to keep the spotlight on us to do something, not just to hold a hearing, bring out a good, strong crowd of supporters for change, but to get something done. No excuses. No excuses. We've got to bring this to a vote. What I found in my time in the House and the Senate is that's the moment of reckoning. Speeches notwithstanding, press releases and the like. The moment of reckoning is when we call a vote on these measures. It's time to do that. I don't believe there's ever been a moment in America's wonderful history when a business or industry has stepped up and said, regulate us, put some legal limits on us. Businesses exist by and large to be profitable. And I think that we got to get behind that and say profitability at what cost. Senator Kennedy, a Republican colleague, said, is our technology greater than our humanity? I think that is a fundamental question that he asked. What I would add to it, are our politics greater than technology? We're going to find out. I want to thank a few people before we close up here. I've got several staffers who've worked so hard on this. Alexandra Gelber, thank you very much, Alexandra. Jeff Hansen, Scott Jorgensen. Last point I'll make, Mr. Zuckerberg, is just a little advice to you. I think your opening statement on mental health needs to be explained because I don't think it makes any sense.